Okay, do I take that? We hand over to Justine to introduce the briefing agenda, please.
Kia ora everyone anō. Look, today, building on our earlier discussions today is really an information exchange for yourselves. But at the start of the year, given all of the good work going on, I felt it was really important that we had an opportunity to brief the governors for KMR on some material things that we also want to just make sure are well visible. There are some discussion points there for us all. There are some signals about things we need to take care of, as well as things that we've done well. So today's briefing is really all about having a brief presentation and then moving into discussion. You can see that the presentations, there are 4 of them today, one on a landowner survey, one on our staff engagement results, an update from Ben Griffin and Willie from around communications and engagement. And I'd really like us to have a good discussion and dialogue in that space. I know it's important to the governors, and we're seeing some really great things going on in that space. But lastly, and certainly not least, a little bit of an update from Steph on the freshwater farm plans work that we've done to date, notwithstanding my earlier comments in the previous meeting about the fact that we still would like some policy and regulatory certainty. But just to introduce Tassiano Milfont, who is joining us today. Tassiano's a professor at the University of Waikato. He has done some incredible work in social data, behavioural insights. So I'd like to invite Tassiano to briefly introduce himself and to kick off with our first survey. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Justine. Thanks for having me in here. Ko Tassiano Hau. As Justine mentioned, an academic at the University of Waikato here in Tauranga, Moana, but I'm on a secondment with the Ministry for the Environment, and our team, the System Change and Capability, is supporting KMR in the amazing mahi that you're all doing. And one way we thought to help was to provide some insights on the landowners, and people who are involved in the project. So the first piece we did was on this feedback on grant recipients. So the conclusion of a grant provides an opportunity to get some information about if people found the process easy, how was to interact with the team, and so on. So together with Ben, we developed a draft survey that was, improved with comments by Justine and myself. And then I created an online version using Qualtrics as an online platform for delivering surveys. And we had 12 respondents of that survey. Next slide, please. So the first question was the process of getting the grant. So the vast majority of respondents said that getting KMR grant was easy or very easy. And the overall contracting process was also easy or very easy. Although there are some participants who had indicated a neutral position, no participant said that the process was difficult or very difficult to get the grant. Next slide. And then we asked what could be improved. So they noted that the initial setup was a bit slow, and we had discussions with the team previously. It's understandable because those the grant process was being implemented. It was the first time, and this has been improved already. So we discussed the ways of improving communication, maybe some flexibility, but there is also some misunderstanding of recipients of the role of KMR. So it's making those roles and responsibilities clearer from the beginning. Next slide. And then we asked about the field advisors themselves, because these are the people that the landowners are interacting, and in this case, the grant recipients. Of all respondents, they all agree that, or strongly agree that the interaction with the field advisor were really positive, and the field advisors were able to answer their questions in a appropriate way. So they had the knowledge to provide the information they needed, and none indicated any negative interaction. We also asked how did they found out about KMR, because it can help us to communicate better the program. You can see the answers there, but overall, I was interesting to note that word of mouth and the connections with Northland Regional Council were the main ones. And although KMR has to be seen as independent, and it is independent, the relationship with Auckland Council, and in this case, the Northland Council, has been highlighted as a way to promote the program. Next slide. And then we asked about the way of working, the overall way of working. So here we move from the field advisors to the overall team. And again, the response are overwhelming, really positive. So participants saw that the relationship was really positive. The way of working was really easy, really efficient, really professional. And they also asked, well, is there any other ways that we can benefit from KMR? So again, there is some, is matching expectations of landowners and making clearer what KMR can provide to them. Next slide. What about broad improvements? Most respondents could not think of any ways KMR could do things better, which is reassuring. It indicates again that the team is doing a really good job. And the suggestions refer more to reducing barriers and attrition. So as I said, there's some delays on the process of the grant. Again, understandably, because it was the first time that it was introduced, and the team has worked hard I just mentioned to improve the process. And again, other suggestions might be outside the scope of the program. And we asked, what does the project mean to you? So KMR is seen as significant forward-thinking contribution to the overall environmental well-being of the region. So it's a really positive connotation. This what motivates people to be involved, and respondents appreciate the opportunity to quick start some of these thinking, in practice with the grant. So the grant really helped them to have a go at it and interact with the project to benefit the region. Next slide. Any other comments? So at the end of the survey, we asked, is there anything that we missed that you'd like to raise? So they just few people indicated additional comments, and again was illustrating our overall positive experience with KMR. They recognize it as an excellent initiative for getting started with particularly native planting and riparian efforts. They also illustrated this hope, for the benefit of the region and thinking about the next generation. Next slide. So some conclusions. So the recipients who completed the survey provided glowing feedback about the grant application and contracting processes. Also really positive about the field advisors, and they are clear champions of KMR. So we suggest that because they are true champions of the project, they already interact with the team. They could use, the team could use them as the champions and promote the program even more. And we saw that word of mouth was one main way that they found out about KMR. So, word of mouth can be a tool, a strategic tool to promote the project even further. So we had this idea of creating little Kaima champion badges for those who have been involved. So if people ask, they can explain about it and why they're doing, why they're involved in the project. Next slide. So overall, as you know, Kaima is a voluntary program, so landowners have to elect to take part. So we believe that understanding the social context, what motivates people to be involved, what are the barriers, are really important. Here, I just provided some illustrations we've been discussing with the team. And actually, this week, we'll be discussing a broader survey with landowners involved with Kaima. Again, to understand what motivated them to be involved and what are the potential barriers. So if you're, by understanding those drivers and barriers for being involved, we can more easily scale up to the broader region. So I think that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tassiano. I see we've got some questions. Virginia.
Kia ora, Tassiano, and thanks for that, the survey. So can I ask how much, because I'm mindful that you only had 12 responses to the survey, so out of what, 88 landowners, is that right? So that's quite, that's a response. I saw the response rate, so I'm just concerned that we only had 12 respondents and they're all quite favourable. So I wonder about what the others would say if they got this the survey. Firstly, and I'm just looking at the limitations of the survey and how it was probably carried out. So how long did they have to fill out the survey, and was it all, how did you contact them and everything?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So in any survey, there is attrition, self-selection, so maybe people who had a more positive experience with Kaima were elected to take part in the survey. We didn't control the recruitment for this survey. The one I mentioned that we are developing for, and we're gonna discuss this week. I think we want to really think more carefully on the recruitment process, to try to get everyone, so all voices, positive or negative, because then it would be a better representation. And as I mentioned, we also want to identify the barriers. So the negative aspect is also important for improving, so we just don't want the positives, because we want to improve things. So we'll work closely with the team to, to recruit, but because of anonymity, we can't have the names of the participants. So it's up to the team to send the invitation to landowners. So it's fully anonymous from our side, and then once participants respond, it's fully anonymous as well. So the team doesn't know who respond the survey. But in any survey, there will be some attrition and self-selection.
Cool, thank you.
If I could add to that, of the 88, so the dates we chose were from the initial start of the program, of which funding was allocated to people who'd been fully paid out. So some of that attrition could be contributed to, I've done my project, I haven't thought about it in potentially 6 or 8 months, so it's too far gone. Whereas, yes, as Tassiano mentioned, the future survey, I believe, looks at all landowners at various stages, whereas these people were just people who had sort of, as far as they were concerned, potentially had completed their projects. And those landowners, yes, were, as Tassiano mentioned, anonymous. So they were sort of able to be free and frank in some of their concerns. And for those who have concerns, I think they have other ways of contacting us, and they sort of let us know about those processes. But yeah, as a baseline, it was sort of the start, and then the next iteration will grow on that and develop. I think Justine had a comment she added to that as well.
No, thank you. And I think even if we do get negative comments, I think we need to, acknowledge those as well, and we can work on them. And probably my other one was that I noticed, the respondents and how they found out about it, or there was no comments about the joint committee. Whereas I think, the joint committee does do a fair bit of passing on what the KMR does. So I was quite, interested to see those responses, and Joint Committee wasn't one of them, so that's okay. All right, thank you.
I just want to mention, so perhaps that we could recycle that question again to the broader survey, because that would capture more responses, and the Joint Committee might be listed among those there. So I will take a note on that. So to add that question again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michelle, you have a question?
Oh, hi. So just about the process, which is probably more for you, Tatiana, but in the future, will all participants automatically receive a survey and at the end of each engagement, and even if that might be a completed engagement or not, because there could be reasons why people don't continue after an initial contact, that could be captured by a survey that we could learn from?
Yeah, it's something I have raised with the team. I think it's an opportunity. We call it intercept survey. So doing in the point of contact to get a little bit of more information. The focus of this new survey that we're developing on the early adopters, if you will, is those people who have been involved first. But we believe that that knowledge would be really helpful to understand why other people perhaps had a first contact but never really engaged further, or those who might have some reaction to it. So we are exploring ways with the team to use these, point of contact as much as we can to get some social data, because it will be really informative to the team overall. Thanks.
That's great, thank you. I think, that learning of why people don't proceed definitely would help support the uptake of the program and that kind of thing. I've got other questions, but they're more in line, they're more about the feedback that's been received. And so I don't know if we want to do the process kind of stuff about the survey process first. Justine, I'll leave that up to you.
Sure, just one comment on the process side then. So we're meeting, I've been virtually, myself in person with the team down in Wellington, I think it's later this week, and Ilka and co, to talk about that next much wider survey, including at that right through all stages. And yes, it will provide really helpful context for us. And we've done a lot of work on our electronic databasing of our landowner information to allow that survey, the wider survey, to occur. It wasn't a trivial task to get everything up to date and in one place digitally, and it's part of our digital tools work. So definitely, we do hear really regularly that through the field advisors, particularly when people drop out of our pipeline, as we call it, for example, they may have had a field advisor go on to the whenua, gone to the farm, talk to them about what we can provide in terms of support, walk the land. We do have a reasonably big drop-off rate through the process. We know from verbals through the field advisors, often it's economic or change in circumstances or weather or the cyclone. We have a pretty good, what I call qualitative, in some cases quantitative understanding of those. We record them in our private information on Mateo Nakura, our digital tool. That said, I think this independent view, particularly those who drop out of our pipeline earlier, will be really helpful, because it may mean that we adapt our engagement or communications, or if there's just some issues, who knows, with an individual or whatever, we'll get to understand what's getting in the way. So Tatiana and the team absolutely supportive of us trying to get that easier. Also, we've got a little bit of feedback on the line there. Just going to So absolutely right. But maybe we go into questions now from yourself, Michelle, in a wider sense.
Okay, sure. Actually, there might be one more that I have, which might be about process as well. But I was just going to suggest about striking out staff names, like Mitchell's mentioned in there a couple of times. And I think going forward, if these are public documents, and if there's going to particularly be something used, I mean, they're all positive for that staff member. But if there was a negative, there might be HR things that really probably don't need to be in this context.
That's right. In this case, Mitchell was aware that we were promoting him. He's an external contractor, so he's very happy to have his name there. But you're absolutely right about the general principle. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I noted. Okay, so on slide 10 was my first question, if that makes it easier for people. It talked about phase 1 has too much admin, but phase 2 now underway is much better. So obviously maybe the learnings from that have already kicked in, but I just wanted to know if there's any specific things that KMR staff allowance maybe could do to assist with the admin side of things for landowners, or is there anything else, in regards to funding that could help, kind of thing?
Great question. I know we made a bunch of changes around our contracting based on very vocal earlier feedback, and so that contracting process has been streamlined significantly, and I think the invoicing process has been tidied up and clarified, and that was because landowners were getting a little confused around how much to invoice us for right at the end of the project. Those are two changes we've made. Lisette Wilson, who's our ops director, is here on the line today. We are continually refining our contracting process. That's usually where we get the noise. But any other thing you want to talk to there, Lisette?
Yeah, sometimes it's kia ora, thanks Justine. Sometimes it's the landowner not knowing what to charge us, but also not putting all the right things on the invoice, such as tax invoice if the GST registered and the like. But when we send contracts out to new landowners, we send them out the guidelines in terms of what needs to be on an invoice, as well as particularly if they are new to us or new to the NRC accounting system, the supplier setup, and we ask them, and we usually hand on heart have to chase them a little bit for the supplier setup, but once they're set up once, that's it. So I think we've done as much as we can, but we also talk to our field advisors. So if there's maybe a landowner hasn't done all of the things, so maybe they've got 5 fences and they've done 4, so there's a slight change in what they'll be reimbursed. We've talked to field advisors about how they work that out, and any concerns or wanting us to double check their figures, we'll do that for them.
Yeah, that's cool, because I know even in the education realm, for instance, if there's grants and things, there are some companies that even help write the grant application for you, because everyone's time poor and that kind of thing. And so that's why I was wondering if there's a role that KMR could fulfill in that respect, which may eliminate any barrier to uptake because of that.
And we certainly have done that before, particularly when field advisors or maybe the landowner isn't quite sure. We'll work through that and send them an email with what they should put on their invoice.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. My next question was on slide 14. Well, it was probably more of a comment, really. I noticed one of the feedback saying maybe a little less red tape, plus hold your image and keep well away from the carbon credit properties. I thought that was kind of a good reminder about, KMR being a leading example in environmental outcomes, and sometimes it's not what you achieve for the final outcome, but how you go about achieving that is actually upheld really important with people as well. So I just think it was kind of a nice little reminder about that. And the next one was the slide 17 about the champion badge or certificate. I realized that for the flagship sites, there was signage at the gate, for instance, of the KMR property, and I didn't know if that was something that is done for all properties that engage with KMR, if it's just the flagship sites, but it could be another way of uplifting.
I'm happy to talk to that, and Ben will jump in too. It's just we are working with close to 600 landowners now, so it would be quite an expensive proposition to put signage on everyone's fence. But that said, there are some what I call not just the navigator sites, there's champion sites, but also there are some geographies around main state highways and or well-used high traffic roads that we might identify. But I think it's going to be more at a tailored. I'm just thinking, we always run a cost effectiveness lens around the KMR investment. So we may choose to do that in a slightly different way. And promoting we've got our postcards, they're a lot cheaper. They can be left in a lot more locations for people to read. And likewise, you'll hear after this meeting the next day or so about our people booklet, which tells stories of the people engaged in our program, and we know that when people see people like them working with us, then it helps them imagine themselves working with us. So there's a bunch of ways that we make the landowners visible to others, and some of them are more cost effective than others. Kia ora.
Okay, thanks. That's it from me.
I just have another question. Oh, sorry, Tami.
No, carry on.
Yeah, I have another question, and it's come through a text into my phone. Were there, of all the landowners that were surveyed, were there any Māori that had come through, Ben, in the results? Were there any Māori landowners at all?
Tasiano, I don't think we asked a self-identifying ethnicity question, did we?
No, we didn't include that at all. And I also saw the question from Tammy as well of the type of property. We didn't ask that, but we could definitely include in the broader survey if that's of interest. However, by knowing who got the grant, you might have an indication of the property type, Ben, or maybe even ethnicity. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we would have ethnicity because we weren't collecting that data as part of the sort of initial process. We are now, but from the initial, October 2020, when people started applying or we were handed over stuff from NRC, we weren't. But I'm pretty sure in the draft survey that's out this week, we are collecting some of that information so we can just sort of keep building out a bigger and bigger picture in terms of self-selection for that as well.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Would it be helpful, can the joint committee send it out or anything like that, or just in case you're not reaching people we're thinking of, or not?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll figure out on Thursday exactly who it is we're needing to capture and whether we've got that contact information, or if there are people who haven't even got involved, how we could capture them as well. So I think there'll be a bit of a process of how we can send out this link to get it as far and as wide as possible so that we can get that information. But I think that'll come out of Thursday's meeting with MFE as well.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, Tommy.
Okay. I think the significance of the question is really in terms of coverage and where we're going, because we spend a lot of time talking about engaging with these entities. We talk at length over flagship farms, over multiply owned incorporations and whatnot, but we don't seem to base a lot of that on the direction that they are wanting or the direction they're seeking. So, for instance, this comment about keep out of trees that counter the emissions trading scheme, I can assure you that is a topical matter insofar as those big incorporations are concerned. So we're kidding ourselves if we think that we can skirt that while the very people we're trying to engage are engaged in something else. So I think the profiling of who we're engaging with it's got a feature, because if we're still struggling to engage with the land interest of our MOU signatories, then we're on a hiding to nothing. We can't keep dealing in this sediment reduction exercise and our signatories to the MOU are not participating. And that's plain and simple from a corporate multiply owned land perspective. And of course, you shift to the comparison with Uri owned properties. And all we're looking for is to try and understand what the issues are that are facing those people who make those decisions. So if they're dealing with the carbon trading scheme and we're dealing with sediment reduction and we're saying we'll stay out of each other's road, we're flogging the dead horse, I'm afraid, in my opinion. But anyway, that's I'm glad that it's going to be considered on the 29th and look forward to the next iteration. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tami, thank you for that comment. I do need to remind us that, you know, the landowners are the ones that some of them are very pro working in the carbon credit space, and in fact it helps us, KMR, to for them to be able to afford to work with us and meet the 50% co-funding regime that typically applies, or in the case of Whenua Whānui Fund, the other regimes. And so it's very much as a horses for courses approach. And in fact, some of the work we're doing right now at large scale afforestation, the landowners are actively involved in the carbon market. So we definitely engage in that as relevant but guided by the landowner. And of course, now the registered forestry advisor must provide those forest management plans and we require that before we engage into project planning. So often there are 3 parties engaged, and but again, landowner choice is very paramount here, as well as the sediment reduction drivers. So those 2 things often come together, and sometimes landowners do not wish to be involved, and that's fine too. We work with a variety of perspectives and a variety of land types and ownership types. So just to be aware, we're not that was a particular landowner's piece of feedback, but as a program, we are engaging across the board with a number of different approaches. I just think it's worth clarifying. Kia ora. Okay, it might be time to head into the staff engagement survey. So just a little bit of background to this. KMR is an agile learning organisation. You hear me say this quite a lot. That's because, we pilot a lot of approaches and we do adapt them once, we have feedback in, or once we find something's not working. As a result, we're quite responsive to feedback, and that means we seek it actively in a variety of different ways. You'll have seen our monthly key performance indicator reporting. Now that is something that we tend to provide to MFE, but it actually helps us from a management perspective, and it also keeps us focused on the things we're trying to achieve under the deed of funding and under the MOU. So performance benchmarking is something we're doing a lot more of in KMR, and we'll continue to do a lot more of that this year and beyond. One of the ways we can benchmark our performance is to look at our staff engagement. I believe that's an annual process. This is the first one we've been involved in. And so the purpose of today is, it's a really good understanding for governors to know about the Maurikuta staff and where they're at. I have, obviously, when you do benchmark engagement surveys for staff, you typically benchmark them against something. So we've taken an analogue agency and shown the typical results. And because we're quite a technical or scientific and technical agency, we've benchmarked against an analogue one. And it's not necessarily to provide a contrast to that agency, it's more to give you as governors an understanding about what numbers you're seeing on these in this engagement survey results and how we just generally compare. But again, you can, you could pick an all orgs benchmark, which is typical. We just didn't have that information, so we used an analogue agency. All right, Ben. So a first set of questions, I've grouped them according to theme. There's a bunch of questions around wellbeing, diversity and inclusion. Good news is that the Maurikuta staff feel that the KMR cares about health and well-being, which we're really pleased about, and that is our kaupapa, as you know, so very keen to see those results. A lot of them feel very comfortable to be themselves at work, and again, that's super important to us, given our MOU and given our staff, and many of them, they're actually quite diverse. Good to see they feel that KMR treats people fairly and consistently, and again, we have a really big equity lens in how we run ourselves and how we work externally, and I'm really pleased to see that staff are feeling that same way internally. Again, this there was some comments around this one, so I want to dwell on it. Generally, very strong results here. One or two people disagreed around the opinions being heard and valued, and as a leadership team, we'll be unpicking that a little bit more at our away days to understand what's getting in the way for a small number of our staff. Again, very strong results in this space, perhaps not as strong as some of the other responses, and that we were more normative around agree rather than strongly agree. And again, we'll be looking a little bit to understand about the neutral response there. And I think in part it is to do with the fact that we're a very flat organisation, so to speak, and that we're having to what I call verticalise the work to get through it. And you'll see that workload has come up a little bit in the next section, but it will definitely be something we dig into. This is good news. I think this shows that the management, we do have a very team-based approach to how we run ourselves. I'm really pleased with these results because it says that people can bring their knowledge to bear and can speak their truth and have their views heard. So it's a little bit contrasting to that earlier response, but is very helpful to know where they're at in terms of the management approach. Career support and pathways is something I do want to just flag a little bit, but yep, into this suite of questions. I'm romping through them, but have questions at the end. So resources, info and tools to do the job, fairly strong scores there, so I won't dwell on them. Job using strengths and abilities, again, pretty good feedback there. There is some feedback comment around the jobs being quite narrow and that people have more to bring to the jobs. So again, we'll be looking at that through the performance objectives and development setting for the team, the Maurikura. Very good. And again, this is a related question. I want to just dwell on it a tiny bit. Kaipara is a small agency to be, or program that's going into an agency to be. There isn't a lot of room for career progression, and it's come through a little bit in our comments. We do invest quite a lot, as you know, in training and mentoring our Maurikura staff, but in terms of there are, vast career pathways in-house. That's not the case. At some point soon, we'll need to look at this as a leadership because, and it's not this year, but perhaps next calendar year. How do we think about supporting the Maurikura staff to grow and develop into other agencies, whether they're URI agencies or beyond? So just want to, flag that growth and development piece because it will become a progressive issue. And for me, as a small, it's a small agency, at the end of the day, that's something I don't want to lose these skills from the kaupapa. How do we then take people into the next stage of their career pathways? Flexible working, all good, very similar to whole agency scores, which is great. This one is a concern and I do want to dwell on it. Kaipara, I often say, is a startup. We had a lot to do and it's a really small team. This slide here is a concern and it is something that we will be working on as a leadership team. We've got some work already and I just want to acknowledge the parent agency here. We are moved to a 9-day fortnight to try and increase wellbeing in a way that's helpful. I think that's all feedback from the staff. The Maurikura staff is already highlighting that is taking the pressure off and allowing that mental space from work. But I think we have more to do here. And again, that will be a topic of the away day coming up. People are very happy with the job and want to stay there, generally speaking, which is brilliant. Into now management and leadership, and again, this is a really important one for the leadership team. So they feel supported and respected by the rest of the team, double thumbs up, and by the manager, double thumbs up. Team manager acknowledges effort, very strong scores there. Very happy to see that the managers are seen to walk our talk, and that's particularly important given our MOU and the equity lens and some of the values that are baked in, if you like, to Kaipara's kaupapa. I personally am very happy with this one, but of course, that's it's easy when you do something slightly different to get different scores, but nonetheless, very happy to see that. Purpose and fit, and again, a number of our staff work incredibly hard for their uri partners, their uri, their iwi, their hapu, their whānau. They do this. I do want to just dwell on that. One or two of our staff member are clearly not feeling that they're getting the personal accomplishment in the way that I would hope they do. So I do want to understand what's behind that. And the comments probably relate back to the sense of nowhere to go and an inability to apply wider skills and strengths they have to the work at hand. Next slide, thanks. Very keen, very happy with these scores. They know what we're trying to achieve in KMR, which is good. Valued by the rest of the organisation, and I just want to, and again, without naming names, I think we do feel a little standalone. We were deliberately designed to be standalone from all of our 6 program partners. It was a deliberate choice taken by Malcolm and myself at the time, and with governance support. What that tends to mean, though, is, and we've been busy, so our job is to get on and deliver on the contract in front of us. What that's possibly led to is some sense of us and them, and we had that as well with other partners. There's no problem with that. It's just part of the nature of our being. That said, I do want to understand this a little bit more and unpick whether or not now we're in a phase of program maturity, whether or not we can do some work to bring others along with where we're at, what we're trying to do, and have them value the work that we do. So summary scores, just to put it into context, they're not all that different from the benchmark agency, the analogue agency, but there are a lot of very happy staff in the Kaipara Maurikura, and I do just want to note that because I've been an executive leader for a long time, and these scores really are very positive, and I just want to acknowledge the whole team for that. Kia ora. Questions, thoughts, comments, go for gold. Amy.
Justine, thanks for that. I just wanted to check in with you about the timing of the engagement survey, because obviously there's a big element of the time of year which has an impact on our feelings of being having good work-life balance. So it looks like it was from 2023, so I presume it was late last year.
Yes, it's October, November, I think, somewhere in that. So I can't recall the details. It was before the 9-day fortnight, and we were feeling pretty burnt out by the end of the year. It's true. That said, I still believe there are some issues there, and we are trying to understand and resolve them a little bit more too. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like what you've got coming up is well timed, though, with people having energy to put their minds to positive ways forward. So just, yeah, I think, like you say, overall a really good result, and trust that you guys have got the skills to tease out some of the places that you can do a little bit more. So kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora, and thanks for that vote of confidence, and also in the chat. Just one thing, the digital tools are making a difference already around efficiencies, time. I mean, it's true, and I'm not making a party political broadcast here, but we've got the same staff now. It's nearly 600 landowners as we did at 31 at the time the MOU was signed, or 35, or whatever the number. I always get that number wrong, but we have to find efficiencies around the timing. I am looking to, we've had our first staff member leave, Tahi, who's gone to back to his hapu to help, and that's a good thing. We're happy to support him in his journey, but we are carrying a gap at the minute too, and that needs resolving. Yeah. Who is next? Tame. Oh, September was the timing frame. Tame?
Sorry, Michelle, pass it over to Michelle.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, no, thanks, Tame. It was, really positive, I thought, and some common things in there that I think you get in a lot of workplaces, especially in, public kind of arena, the whole work-life balance, things that follow you home a heck of a lot. But I just wanted to ask, obviously, you might have access to the roles as to who responded, and I thought maybe with those ones that people were obviously having some issues, were they was it common to like one or two people like answering that way consistently, that there might be a lot of connection between the 2 different responses or 3 different responses that were on the negative side?
Yeah, thanks, Misha. That's a really helpful question. It's also one, so they're all anonymized, so we can't correlate score to comment. One or two, so for example, the quality of the offices, we're quite cramped where we are, and that's not a disrespect to our hosts, that's a common thing. That came up a little bit, and I understand who would have put that comment down, because that person has been very clear with us too around the need to perhaps resolve those issues, and there are ways that we are trying to do that, so that's all good. But yeah, it is anonymous for a reason, and I haven't spent too long thinking about the who, whats and maybes. My sense is there's 1 or 2 individuals who, you know, are doing a role that's perhaps less, what's the word? They can be more, they have more skills to offer than the role they're in, and so that wouldn't surprise me if it was probably 1 or 2 people who are consistently voting less engaged, in a less engaged way, but I can't tell that for sure.
Yeah, even if it was anonymous, it might be quite nice to have some sort of coding system that you could see a common kind of trend with someone's answers, so you can make those connections. But I know that's really hard to try and balance, but it makes it more useful for solving issues. That's what I mean.
Yeah, look, you're right, but the good news is
it's so good, so that's awesome to see. Yeah.
Thanks. So we're participants in the survey rather than designing it. But look, you know, the good news about the Maurikuta staff is they're not shy about saying what they think, and this is a good thing. So I'm expecting our Way Day to, you know, to cover some of these issues, but ideally to bring some solutions too. Like, you know, we don't live in a perfect world anywhere, and at least I don't, and nowhere in the world is perfect. So it's about saying, okay, these are things that are less good than other things. What can we as a team, a Maurikuta, do about this, and how might we think about finding solutions?
Yeah, I wanted to add to those range of questions about the whole of agency and KMR. And what I think of is, and focused on the, you know, the 9-day week or 9-day fortnight that KMR have bought into or subscribed to, or has been prescribed to them. I think it's at those times that we're really reliant upon the leadership and direction of our NRC representatives. And I don't mean that in any way, shape or form to dodge the issue, but trying to comment and navigate something that I know absolutely nothing about is a bit tricky. So the nuances of what it was all intended to do and achieve for the well-being of staff, I get that, but we don't know, as a joint committee, collectively, we don't know too much about the detail that goes with it. So I think, you know, with it comes direction or support or guidance from our NRC members when it comes to the managing that as KMR and Kaipara Maurikuta. I don't want to sort of, you know, dodge the issue, but I think as a joint committee we could do well in having all the information, just like how we've tried to navigate this whole business from day one. And as we sit now, I you know, listening to matters that are being raised as a concern, and just want to assure the Maurikuta staff that, you know, we're there to support. But when it comes to details and the nuances of 9-day fortnights, I'm a little bit stuck out on the limb as to what that means. And I put it to you as somebody may have already raised it. You know, if you think that you work for your hapu or your iwi or your people, and it's 9 to 5, well, you must be on another planet, because the ones I'm connected to, good grief, that's the last thing, you know. And it is even, the phone is even buzzing right now about resolving some issues and or trying to find solutions. I think, and you know, at times I used to get quite worked up about it and think, no, 5 o'clock, I'm going to turn my phone off. Yeah, doesn't last long. You know, and I guess striking that balance in terms of the well-being and you know, the value that people see themselves within an organization. So I just want to make that comment and, you know, wish you well in navigating that. But I think it's a combined with what we ended our first session on from Tatiana. I think we'll get there with a lot more information and a lot more clarity around our respective roles. That was all. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tame. Just in case, because it's a valid point, in case people are not aware, individual staff do have a choice about whether they join into the 9-day fortnight process. All of the Mōrikura staff have elected to join the pilot, which goes for 1 year. So that will take us through, I think, till early December this year, and then there'll be a decision at the whole agency level around that. So we are subject to the employment conditions of the wider agency. In a flat organisation, you're right, though there are some implications around how we work. We had already been working on a week where we had 1 day that there were no internal meetings, and what that meant was that our Mōrikura staff, who had to drive a long way, usually to go and meet with people on the ground, on farm, on marae, in the community, could do that safely and give that attention, and or people who were doing quieter work, thoughtful work, could also do that without interruption, and that's worked quite well, and we're retaining that this year. With a 9-day fortnight, it does make it a little harder to find days where we can all be in the office and present in a team-based way, and so we've worked that through, though, and I think we have a way forward that meets the Mōrikura needs, the business needs, work program implementation needs, and make sure that we support those externals, our landowners in particular, our primary customers and clients with whom we work, and that's landowners of all different types, as always, while making sure that we can do the business. And so that is something, though, from a work planning perspective, we need to work through. We actually probably can do less in terms of some of the key work programs with a 9-day fortnight, and we need to understand what those impacts on our ability to move through the work will be. And that's because some work in the work program we can become more efficient, and we are, and I think our team's pretty jolly efficient now, but there are real time commitments about driving somewhere and meeting with someone and taking the time with someone that our whole kaupapa is based on, that you can't compress and make more efficient, and nor do we want to try that. So that's something that we're just juggling with a little bit in terms of our work planning for the year. Kia ora. All right, thank you for those questions and comments in the chat. We appreciate that, and yes, we will keep everyone posted. And just one closing comment: we've had I have spoken to the Jono about this, and he's been very open-minded and thoughtful and supportive. So we have been raising some of these the issues around the office space, etc. So perhaps we can move on now to our communications update, which Ben, Hope, Griffin, Hope, and Willie Wright will be taking us through. Thank you. And you may need to share the PowerPoint again.
Apologies. Technical Monday. So this overview looks at sort of communications across and engagement across the various program all the way back, sort of a collation of what's happened so far. The Pānui sort of regular newsletter continues to be that key channel. We've actually just clocked into 1,800 over the weekend. Specific Pānui about one subject always get more openings, and there's a world of keywords and AdWords and specialists who can work in that space, and it's a constant trial to get people to read emails amongst phenomenal sales for bathrooms and kitchenware and all the other things that end up in people's inboxes. But we do have great engagement, a lot of opening, a lot of reading, a lot of scrolling. The unsubscribe rate is better than other government organisational benchmarking, and the fact that people click through links to read more is always welcome. One of the sort of highlights I've got is the 10% forward rate over 2023. So that means that when people are getting that email, they're sending it to people who aren't subscribed. And where the sort of assumptions made that they then subscribe, which to sit over 10% over the month is over all the months of last year, and the January to December calendar is great to know that it's still finding its way into an inbox and then heading off to someone else who's interested, and hopefully they become a subscriber, which helps generate more interest. There's been pretty extensive media coverage to date from December 2021 across that 2 years, 96 articles featured in the 7 days since this was published. There's 4 more, so we've cracked the 100. But local reporting is diverse. So from the Mahurangi Matters, the Kaipara Lifestyler, the Northern Advocate, we've featured in Radio Wātea, the Paparoa Press, Kumeu Courier, Rodney Times, Helensville News, the new Hawaii lift out of the Advocate as well. So that's sort of in the local catchment space. There's also been some great national reach, including Radio New Zealand bulletins and stories, online as well. News Hub 6 PM bulletin stories, New Zealand Farmers Weekly, Te Ao Māori News, Stuff NZ, and Jobs for Nature updates, which are sent throughout all of the Jobs for Nature programs through the Government Secretariat, which is quite widely read. And then we've had some interesting international coverage as well. There was a fairly large feature in both the Papakura Courier and the Bay Chronicle mentioning the successes and programs that we've had already and how those could be translated to their harbours in Moana. And the Australasian Water Journal and an Australasian webinar, which is Justine might have to help me with that acronym if she can remember it, because I know it's always is it environmental improvement?
No, it's basically an Australasian environmental impacts or practitioners group. It's quite a wide set of people in the rural but environmental kind of space. But yeah, that's their acronym, and I never actually remember. So the Environmental Institute of Australia and New Zealand. Yes, there you go.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Then sort of recent coverage, just to look back at what's been over the sort of the last 4 or 5 months. We've featured in all of these areas, with a couple quite regular. Only about 6 of those are paid. The rest of it is generated content. So it's either editorial that's been picked up weekly or stories that people are writing. So we're not having to, we are buying and paying for ads, but a majority of our stuff is picked up because they're really interesting stories with really interesting people, and people like hearing about the work that we're doing. The webinars we've had to date, 2 intro to KMRs and 1 specifically about planting in the hillside. There's a 4th coming, which is KMR's approach to planting, which is on March the 14th. Future topics include partnerships, so that's Fonterra and KMR working together. Some in-depth about Whenua Whānui Fund, freshwater farm and freshwater farm plans. They're fairly short. They've not really gone more than about 40 odd minutes. Registrants are sent a video if they're unable to make it live so they can watch it. There's a good forum for Q&A, and it's been watched quite a few times post-event. They've watched more than 10 minutes of it. There's sort of, I guess, it's a continual improvement. I think we keep getting better at figuring out what it is. I know on the most recent one, there was some feedback that it maybe wasn't technical enough. We're not wanting to deep dive in technical because then it would sort of eliminate people who aren't that interested in specific subspecies. So it's finding that balance. They're fairly low resource for us to create in terms of PowerPoint slides and where we are. We're able to host them over a cup of tea and record them and then host them on our website, which means that people can come and watch them back later. And we're looking forward to continuing those sort of 6 to 8 weekly on various topics as they come up. It's a great way to explain to people what it is we're doing, and it puts names to faces, I guess, for people who are subject matter experts within the organisation. They're able to get into some of that nitty-gritty detail, which for some people is pest plants. Yep, absolutely. Next is other sort of wider generated content that isn't just story. So Pānui webinar profiles have been written up about the Hildreths, the Claytons, KMR research project happening, PhD study Orowharo, produced another Pānui in our annual report, which has been very well received and widely sent across the nation, which is wonderful. A few more profiles about the Navigator project in Tangawahine, Polbionics, which is a compostable planting pot that is picking up a bit of coverage across the country, and we're helping them, working together, I guess, as a partnership to deplasticize part of the framework for planting. Of course, the video for the Tinapai fishing competition, and then some other covers on the Aotearoa Farms Navigator, Huruiki Navigator profile, another webinar, and World Wetlands Day as well, out in the Underwood wetland as part of a Fish and Game doc project. We've held 6 partnership forums since the start of the program. We've had roughly 3 a year. There were a couple of cancellations to regional border and COVID issues, cyclones and extreme weather. They have relatively great reach. They've been attended across the value by about 212 people from about 60 organisations. We capture all that information, including NGOs and government agencies. Specialty topics have included the Whenua Whānui Fund, economic opportunities for landowners, program reviews from supplier perspectives, which is information we're working through about how to make it worthwhile for suppliers to get involved, and partnership perspectives as well, and then other conservation environmental programs to showcase the work that they're doing and how people can be involved. So that's everything from pest-free peninsulas to conservation volunteers, to Ilka herself talking about some of the work that MFE are doing across the country, which is always very interested, because in the Venn diagram of people who care about what we're doing and people who care about the environment as a whole, it's almost a circle. We've been out and about, talking to lots of different people about lots of different things about the work that we're doing. I won't rip through the list. We're in the middle of AMP shows. There was one just on the weekend. I've got half the stand set up for the Northland Field Days this week. We'll be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just in I think it's called Balance Way, but we're just over the road from NRC and the Predator 50 team. It's currently raining in Dargaville, but apparently that's going to disappear by Wednesday, so hopefully that'll go. There's been some great options in terms of the beef and lamb open days, and a few great planting days in the community, and workshops. There is some more coming up still as well, including a talk at the Hokianga Harbour Care, presenting at both the Balance Environment Farm Awards for Auckland and Northland, another beef and lamb open day on a beef and lamb farm in Tangawahine, a few more AMP shows, and the open day, as well as a entrance into the New Zealand High Tech Awards for our digital tools, to showcase the results that are coming out of that program. Earlier, when we talked about sort of the survey results, we've started capturing as well where people hear about us when they fill out that expression of interest, is that initial form. This is from September 23 to the end of January. KMR Field Advisor sits at that sort of secondary orange at 26, word of mouth being 27. Field Advisor could include things like a partner at such as a Fonterrable Sustainable Dairying Advisor or the Forest Bridge Trust, other partner or other rural professional under the banner of KMR, so they could be wearing a different hat. Other could be any other person, or something specific like Joint Committee. We don't have that as a specific option, but they are able to type that in if they want. And I sort of see everything on the left-hand side of the screen, the news article and media advertising and public events feed into people knowing about that word of mouth in the Field Advisor, and then being the ones to push them into that program so they get those 7 touch points before they sign up and sign up that expression of interest. So we'll keep tracking that to see how that grows and how that supports people learning about and expressing their interest in the program. So some of the improvements in the future focus for this year is there is a second edition of Our People, which Justine mentioned earlier, which talks about some of the people we're working with, the projects they're doing, and shows people what are options for taking part in the KMR and why people do that. So we'll have copies of that available. We're still working on the new edition of the website, a greater growth in video content. So Dave Allen was the one who produced that Tinapai video along with the support of Justine and Edina. And we're hoping to capture more stories in that way that showcase, I guess, the work that KMR is doing now and what it could lead to. And then, a couple more award applications, as I mentioned, the New Zealand High Tech Awards as well. And working with Tasiano and his team to improve wording and inclusivity about the KMR being a movement. And then communication approaches to focus on rural landowners. There's always sort of study and conversations about how we get how every company tries to get, that specific catchment group or specific, it's the wrong word, specific group of people. And with the help of MFE and their insights team, we can hopefully create a few more resources or specific targeted marketing that can get them interested and aware of what it is that we're doing. Yeah, so that's sort of a jolt through the program that we've delivered so far. Were there any questions? I see Justine added in the chat as well. Yes, John was also there. They've had a lot of footage, which was great. It's better to have than not enough, which is always wonderful. Michelle.
Oh, hey, I just, given the good sort of value or the effectiveness of word of mouth, I was just wondering at the field days events and events like that, do you have maybe a local landowner at each event that can talk to other landowners? So it's not
so
just
at the
but
at the Arapahoe show, we had Penny and Hal were there, and they were talking to landowners, which was great. At field days, we're planning on having a drop in from one of the Navigator field advisors. We have a couple of them booked in for sort of hour slots. A lot of them are either doing other things or when they come and say in. But we've also had at events people who've been part of the project. Just remember this last year at the Walk With AMP show, we had a guy who we were talking to and he said, oh yeah, I'm already part of it. And then he came back 2 hours later and brought both of his neighbors and said, this is the thing I was telling you about. So even being at the show allows people to know, oh, they're there. I can get, when I see so-and-so, I'll get them to come and talk to you. So having those landowners telling those stories or talking about how it is to work with us is a lot easier. So yeah, we do try and get people there to talk about the program. So it's not just sort of us extolling the virtues, but that other landowners are there. And sometimes it's just a great spot for a catch up and they go, oh, that's really interesting, and move on. But otherwise, yeah, we do get a few landowners, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's cool, right? Because it's kind of like you're supporting the community from taking that role, to take that role. And sort of that in itself is maybe putting some longevity in the purpose of it, if you know what I mean. So cool.
And I think a lot of those people who are our early adopters are either known and have their own personal background in the broader environmental space. So when they start to see how those projects exist, they're able to translate, oh, so that's how you're doing what it is you're doing. There was a very in-depth discussion at the Arapahoe show that I sort of ended up tuning out on about shelter belts and the best option for that. And it got very into Penny and Hal and some Kumara farmers talking about what's the best for this very specific patch of land on a road. And I was like, we're getting a bit too detailed here. But it's good that they can share that knowledge. And he left with some notes that he was like, well, if you guys are doing it, I should be doing it as well. So it's good to see that really local response rate. Yeah.
So I'm just going to move us on. Sorry, I do apologise, guys. I'm going to move us on though because I don't want to run us out of time. But yeah, the Navigator farmers are definitely doing their bit, as our field advisors are too. Can I move us on unless this is something urgent from others? But thank you, Ben, and really appreciate that. So now we're moving to our Whenua Whānui Fund engagement. So Griffin Hope will be talking us through quickly if you can. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Can you hear me? Thanks. Oh. Very happy to be here today to give a little update on the work of the Whenua Whānui Fund. You can see here this beautiful Google Earth image of the Kaipara Moana catchment and a whole lot of little points all over the map. This is kind of a representation of a network of relationships, a catchment alive with stories. It's hard to present in a quantitative way. It's more of a qualitative image about relationships and trust and confidence. But it shows that we have engaged with roughly 100 or more groups, landowners, schools and marae, etc., over the last couple of years, directly and through our project allies. I'm pretty happy about this work. That little map that we saw before shows all of the Whenua Whānui projects that have been developed, contracted or completed, the Whenua Whānui projects that are in development or various stages of conversation, the Enviro Schools networks in both the north and southern parts of the catchment that are quite active. And if we just jump forward to the next image, we can see this is all of the Whenua Whānui projects that are currently in our pipeline. So it's quite difficult to capture the actual situation. This is changing rapidly. So we have 12 projects that are completed. There are 4 that are in their second year of planting or coming up potentially a third year this year. There's about 16 projects that are in various stages of development from the top to the bottom of the catchment in blue. If you see down the bottom there, close to the Waitakeres and way up the top by Hikurangi and up in the Kaiho River. There's about 10 projects that are in the design stage and various phases of getting to an EOI or being progressed just after an expression of interest. And there are about 7 projects that are in discussion. I'm happy to say that one of those little red points down on South Head or Takanini Topu has recently done an expression of interest after a couple of years of emails and comms back and forth. And there's 9 school plantings that have been either are completed. 6 have been planted, some to varying degrees of success, as you can imagine with school projects. And there are 3 or 4 or more planned for planting this year. So if we jump forward, we can see that we've been doing a lot of things well. A lot of things have been working, particularly the Marae Hui with Te Reo Hau with Environ's team, which has led to little clusters of expressions of interest clustered around one of our field advisors. Empowering the Kaipara Uri nurseries and contractors to do work has also generated interest and expressions of interest. The Enviro Schools, I hear from them quite often, how do we engage with communities? We engage communities through schools. So they've been really putting our work out there and spreading the Kaipara Moana name around. The Free Trees to Marae that we did at the end of last year has led to quite a few expressions of interest. We contacted all but a few of the marae around the whole catchment. There's quite a little bit of movement around the catchment groups. We're hearing murmurs that little catchment groups are beginning to emerge in Arapareira and Kaupapa. South Head apparently is kicking back into life, and there's lots of things happening. And we have obviously the Navigator projects up and running. So this has been working. So I like to characterise the work of the Whenua Whānui about supporting a living network of field advisors, landowners, kaitiaki, whānau, marae, kura, hapu, iwi, community groups, creating sediment reduction plans across the catchment, and that our work is to enable that mahi at a local level and support it as best that we can. And essentially we have trios of local actors between a landowner, a field advisor, and the Māori kura working together to make successful remediation projects. We're creating site-specific little interventions that are good enough for now and safe enough to try and get remediation work happening. That'll be Willie's phone. And the Māori kura itself and the team, we're monitoring for anomalies and trying to amplify what's working and put the brakes on what's not working, and trying to tell our stories really, really widely. So we can see that through this work, there are some potential hotspots emerging. They're little clusters with maybe a field advisor or 2 field advisors, with a marae in close proximity, a school, and perhaps 7, 8 to 10 whenua whānui projects emerging in those areas. And this map is just a little indication of some of those emerging clusters or hotspots. They're places where the energy seems to be, and where I think we need to intervene a little bit more to kind of energize those little trios of landowners, field advisors with our support, but mostly around marae and schools. I think there's one more slide. Oh, that's me. Thank you very much for that brief and rapid introduction to the whenua whānui. Happy to stick around or take any questions as required.
Sure. Let's take questions now before we ask Willie to come in, just because I know we've also got to leave enough time for Steph, but that one's a big one because there's a lot going on in Whenua Whānui Fund. And I just want to, shout out, that's one group of some description starting to work with Kaipara every fortnight since we began. And that's actually been quite invisible. It's just such a big catchment. Just really want to acknowledge Griffin's work there, but now you can see that in a spatial way. But any questions or comments for Griffin? Otherwise, we'll move to Willie's presentation around wider mana whenua engagement. All good. We can come back. We've got lots of time to talk about this if needed. So thanks. And there's some chat in there. Okay, Willie.
Yeah, kia ora, Justin. Thank you, members of the Joint Committee. Hey, so I've put together 4 slides. I've actually what I've done is broken down the mana whenua engagement, and to some degree also community engagement, into 4 sort of geographical areas to give you some idea of the coverage and the scale of coverage throughout the catchment. A lot of this work here in engagement is to some degree has also reflected through what Griffin has shown you regarding the mana whenua. So we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just please take the 4 slides as being read. I'll just talk about a few points here though. Dealing with the Northland region, of course, one of the Kaipara Uri, which is not a signatory at this stage to the MOU, has been Te Rora. My engagement with Te Rora is to try and engage them for to bring in a field advisor. Of course, they did have a field advisor. That field advisor has left. Also, their nursery is part of the accredited nurseries for the Kaipara Moana remediation. That's always ongoing, because the other thing too with Te Rora is actually connecting them through to Uriahau or Uriahau being the pilot sort of lead for mana whenua's engagement at a contractual level. That's ongoing. I do have another hui coming up tomorrow with Te Rora. Ngāti Henis are slightly different. There's been other mahis that we've been talking to Ngāti Heni about, and of course always in the case of, and you'll see this in the hapu and iwi conversations on this slide, is that ongoing promotion and engagement, trying to get people to engage with the Kaipara Māori Kura. As I've said, that has led to a few whenua whānuis and of course landowner grants. The mana whenua groups here, Waima, Waitai, Waiora, the committee itself, this has been quite a specific sort of approach to of engagement, because in the past it was the Wairoa project that's actually moved. That's actually between the Northern Regional Council and the Ministry for the Environment. That program finished last year, and there was a heavy push to actually move that program into a Kaipara Moana remediation project, in other words, scale it up throughout the northern part of the catchment that's taken in the Wairoa and the Wairoa rivers. That has not happened at all. And next one, please. Is it Ben? The Western region, like I said, this is not perfect, but I'm just sort of throwing hapu iwi into sort of regions. Uriahau is just an ongoing update all the time. The Paitotopi, you would have heard that they were sort of the big contractors, or they have a contract now with the Kaipara Moana. Te Parawhau, Torihina is just ongoing conversations again for engagement. You heard about what Griffin was saying, uriho kaitiaki, no manga whakahi kaitiaki, and that's been an engagement, and they have actually blossomed into some of the whenua whānui. Tinapai Resource Management Unit, they've been around with KMR for a number of years since we started, and there has been some positive engagement through the whenua whānui. And of course, probably the most recent in that region is the Pototopu Papakainga, which held an AGM end of last year. They are, and I think they have finished it. No, they've signed the contract, so they're moving forward. Of course, the next one, please. Is it? Yeah. Right. The eastern one, the Runanga is an ongoing engagement, just keeping up to date, and so are the marae's and stuff like that. Te Ringa Parawa engagement in whangarei, that's more specifically, there's hui's that's been held around the Parliamentary Commission, and of course that moved to another marae into the sort of northern part of the region. Reconnecting Northland, and that's dealing with sort of the catchment reference groups and trying to actually utilise partnership and trying to broaden, I suppose, the servicing or them as a connector to the communities. And of course, the Kaua Wai Order was the Mātauranga Māori program that was specific to the Waimai Waikai Wai Order program. The Kawanganui Popo Hui, that's Marae and Kaumata and Queer dealing with Ngāti Whātuas. That's more of a visible sort of presence and things like that, and that's always ongoing with the iwi. I think the last one, please, Ben. So Ngau Manga Whakahi and Ngāti Manuhiri Settlement Trust, and also Ngāti Manuhiri is just talking about the place with KMR dealing with the catchment reference groups, and also we do not have a field advisor from that hapu, from that iwi, and so that's always ongoing. Of course, Te Aroha, Hara Nui and Rewiti, those have been the sort of marae's that joint committee have actually held hui at, but specifically Te Aroha marae, there's been quite a bit of work. There's a lot more work coming up through that project, and that's all connected to the Hōtio. The Hōtio project between the Ministry for the Environment, Auckland Council, and of course the Kaipara Moana remediation and planting and fencing, all that comes into it. Te Pora Land Care Group have been at the table with Kaipara Moana remediation for quite some time. Ngau Manga Whakahi, Turi Hau Kaitiaki, and also Ngāti Manuhiri through various programs. They are always together, and I promote and actually support those the kaupapa, and again that's dealing with the Hōtio River and the projects and all the Korowhero as well. Tūriho Kaumata Queer, that's ongoing. That's a monthly update to them on the business of Kaipara Moana remediation. You heard Griffin just talk about, and I've got it here, is land care groups and stuff like that. They're all taken, and we've been working behind the scenes over the last year, 2 years, and we still have yet to secure a kanui ki te kanui with them. Forest Bridge Trust, that's ongoing. They're a partnership with the Kaipara Moana remediation. So that's a sort of very, very high level and brief. Look, I'm just highlighting things here. A lot of these hui's are actually ongoing, so there's just more than one. But I think what I'd like to just sort of indicate to the committees is specifically my role here as mana whenua engagement. I've actually come across a hurdle, I think, that actually is holding the Kaipara Moana remediation back, or the business of KMR back within the northern region. So I've had a brief discussion with Justine, and I have yet to instigate a program or a person that I think that might actually create more of a tangible outcome for the Kaipara Moana remediation, and because basically I'm actually seen in a different role when it comes to the northern part of the catchment. But that's it. The other thing I'd just like to make a comment about, and Tammy's actually touched on it, is that continual after hours phone calls that come in at night and the hui's you go through in the weekends. It's ongoing. And look, I think one good thing though, I've got to say, since this program's been going, and this is actually a huge step from the Integrated Kaipara Harbour Management Group to where we are now. Mana whenua are actually getting, they actually are starting to get there to see what their role is, how they can fit in, and how they can actually contribute not only to Te Tauao, but also to their community and to themselves. Anyway, kia ora. So any questions from the committee members? Oh, on both mine, it's not only my things, but probably also Griffin's as well.
If not, that's okay. I'm conscious of time a little bit. Sorry, I've got some IT issues. Steph, I'm not sure we have time for this, Tame.
Can you hear me? Have I lost you? Oh.
Freshwater farm planning, are we?
Yes, just
Okay.
very briefly, 5 minutes, if that's okay. Thank you. Apologies, everyone.
Yeah, sorry, folks.
All good. Thanks, Willie. So I will do a total cant through this. So you might recall last June that we spoke with you. There'd been freshwater farm plan regulations gazetted by central government. Every farmer with the property more than 20 hectares of pastoral or more than 5 hectares of horticulture would need a freshwater farm plan. Councils indicated to central government when different parts of their catchment these would go live and people would need a freshwater farm plan. Then there was an election. So there's a system in place, but signals are it's going to change. There is an opportunity for KMR in that system once the sort of dust settles, I guess, depending how it all lands. And that, you know, right now, anyhow, in that system, people will need to think about the risks on their to fresh water on their property. In the Kaipara Moana catchment, that's sediment, and they'll need to lock in actions that they would deliver over a 5-year period to help reduce that risk to freshwater. And so KMR there's obviously an opportunity there for KMR because we can help landowners to meet the costs of implementing those activities. And there's a real opportunity to get a kind of streamlined process. It seems a bit crazy for landowners to need to do a freshwater farm plan and then it not be integrated with what we're doing. So we've done a bit of a scoping exercise to look at the opportunities for how we can integrate in a way that helps achieve the kaupapa of remediating the Kaipara Moana. So there are a bunch of slides in your pack that talk about how we could support. So in the freshwater farm plan system, depending on how it changes, there'll be certifiers, but people who certify that somebody's freshwater farm plan is of a particular quality. We've got opportunities to raise awareness of those certifiers to our kaupapa so that whenever they're working with a farmer, they can be promoting the fact that people can get KMR funding to farmers. And we can also support our field advisors where it aligns with their aspirations and skill sets to be moving into that space and to work as a certifier if that's what they want to do. In the freshwater farm plan system, there's also this thing you might have heard of called catchment context, challenges and values. That's something that regional councils must prepare. And that will set out things that people need to take into account in a freshwater farm plan. So there's an opportunity to get alignment there between KMR, its understanding of sediment risk and what people have to take into account in their farm plan. And this kind of links to your point, the question earlier, Jane, about making sure there's aligned versions of maps out there to reduce confusion and also to help us target the right parts of the landscape where there's actually highest risk of sediment. And so it's about making stuff accessible. Ben, in terms of slides, could jump forward a few to one called Catchment Context Challenges and Values. That helps. There's also ways for us to make accessible to anyone doing a freshwater farm plan in the catchment to further promote what we can offer, so that if somebody's out with a farmer developing a freshwater farm plan, it's kind of like a one-stop shop, so that they could also help them access our funding straight away. Again, reducing numbers of visits on farm, reducing the number of people that farmers need to interact with to get stuff done. If you go to the next slide, Ben, the yellow one. Oh, yep, sorry, my computer's out of sync. Yeah, so this is all about streamlining processes for people where relevant, so, and to avoid duplication. And we know it's a big concern for people where they've got to provide their details or have a conversation with one person about one thing and then have a conversation with another person about the same thing. So the more that somebody could do a freshwater farm plan and access our grant funding through the same process, the better. And there are going to be a number of digital tools out there that do freshwater farm plans. We don't think we need to change our digital tools. It can be a streamlined process between the two, between existing freshwater farm plan tools in the market and KMR's grant development tool, Mātai One Kura, rather than investing to expand our tool to do something much bigger and broader. We also recommend, so these are all draft recommendations in a report that we've prepared before the change of government, just before the change of government. The indication at that time was that the freshwater farm plan system would be broadly supported still, but there might be tweaks to it, and you know, they will be confirmed, we expect or hope, within the first half of this year. But you know, time will tell, and we're staying closely in touch with our MFE partners on this and council partners, and we will need to refresh and update our thinking in light of any changes that come through from central government. So the purpose of this conversation or this presentation was really to show where our thinking got to, and acknowledging that government policy might change again and we may need to update our thinking to align with that, but providing the opportunity now, acknowledging that we've run out of time for today or very close to, or that we're running over time, but providing the opportunity for any feedback at this stage. And the intent is to come back to you all, to the hui in May, with a bit more of an update, and we might have more clarity from MFE then as well. Sorry, that's a total canter through.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks. I see Tamu has his hand up though, so it may be procedural or it may be material, but substantive. But Tamu, your floor is yours.
Yeah, slide 86, please. Can you bring that up again?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the KMR engaging with banks?
Oh yeah, so these were things, we spoke to a bunch of people around the country where, like in Canterbury in particular, they've had a requirement to have farm environment plans in place for a number of years now. And we just had some chats about what's worked well with getting people engaged and what hasn't from other programs that will be comparable to this regulated requirement at the national level. And they said one thing that really helped drive farmers to get farm environment plans in Canterbury were the banks, because banks could make having that plan a requirement for getting farm finance, and they could also provide low interest loans for environmental work. So things like that. So it's about thinking about that network of people that farmers interact with and having shared messaging, but they can also, you know, help or support or encourage action in different ways, and banks through that. Yeah, banks sort of emerged as a potential sector that can be quite influential.
Okay.
So whether or not KMR influences in that space, it's just kind of a potential idea. It wouldn't be a top priority for us, but it's something for us to bear in mind.
I think it's a wonderful idea. It's a great idea to create those pathways, but maybe we should be enlisting the help of the government agent to step between the program and the financial sector. And I think it's across the board, because we've got to remember that where these properties are located, they don't have access to the sort of local bank anymore, so they're probably driven out of the main centres or driven on whatever arrangements they have online. So
yeah.
with that, I think if we can make it a sort of agency hall or an agency driven information bank to the funding agents or to the banking fraternity, because it's changed from what used to be the local branch manager being intimately aware of what's going on a singular property. And I just sort of think it'll be handy to have one set of criteria across the whole catchment, rather than having a Dargaville version, a Helensville version, a Rodney version, a Bay of Islands version. And with that, have MFE alongside of us with that form of encouragement. I hope Ilka or whoever is still connected, but otherwise I think it's heading in the right direction, and encourage us all to keep an open mind when it comes to strengthening future arrangements with our people. And hand it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Tim. I agree. Like with there's opportunities, but also KMR can kind of keep an eye on the catchment wide kind of criteria that's being applied as well, and sort of have influence on that, as well as helping landowners with it. There was another policy that we just did a review of through the local board called the Building Dam Safety Regulations 2002, and so I just wanted to kind of put it out there that might be another opportunity for dam stabilisation to get some more planting or whatever. I mean, not being an engineer and how things might actually help, but more about the opportunities that KMR might be able to take to assist landowners with meeting some criteria there and increasing planting that way.
Well,
yeah, those are due for those regulations are coming into force on the 13th of May this year. So it's just finishing consultation at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Any other questions? No comments? Any further comments, rather? We're up to slide 86. So were there other pieces of information on? Here we go. There's no other comments. Thank you, one and all. We're all done.
Kia ora.
And apologies for delving 12 minutes into your afternoon, but thank you, one and all. Enjoy your lunch, and we will be in touch again with the next circulation of information, and as we prepare for our next set of meetings. Thank you to our partners, Ilka and the Ministry for the Environment, and of course Māori Kura staff and joint committee members. Tēnā koutou, kia tahuri ake ki te taupuka i tā tātou hui topa i tēnei rangi. Tēnei rā i hoa, ka whakahoki nei tō mātou reo whakamoemit. He mea tīmata i roto i tōku i te kroria. Tā mātou e whai ake nei, kia horahia tonu tō korowai manaki ki runga kia mātou, me o mātou tini ka rangaranga, huanga, whanaunga. Te hunga kei raro i ngā kapu o te pauri, ngā he manawa o te tinana me te wairua, ke pipi ngā tahi anoi rātou me mātou katoa. I tō koutou taro, piki te ora te kā, me te marama. E nei ngā inoi, taro i te ingoa kaha, mate o tama, wairi o tapu ana he pono. Mā ngai tautoko mai, ani ake ni ai. Kia ora tata.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Kia ora, thank you.
Bye, everyone.